Hey everyone, my name is Valerie and today we are going to create a super cool ripple effect animation. Creating it is much simpler than it looks. To make this ripple effect, all we need to do is create a comp with a background black layer, a few stroke circles, and an adjustment layer with some blur effect on it. Then we will apply some built-in effects to create the 3D digital look to this ripple animation. I learned this trick from Jelly789, who I think is a Japanese motion designer. He has an awesome YouTube channel, so check him out. He has a tutorial where he shows how to do this using a paid plugin called Plexus and another one using a native effects in After Effects. The tutorial is in Japanese, so it was a bit hard for me to understand how he got the effect, but eventually I realized that he uses a very simple technique that I actually used this same technique in my tutorials when I created this hologram effect using the CC ball action effect. So today we are going to use the same techniques, but in this tutorial I actually want to go in depth and explain some key steps for you to remember while using the CC ball action effect. So with that said, let's get started. Before we start the tutorial, I want to announce that after some hard work, I finally released my new course on how to create and animated posters in After Effects. In this course, you will learn how to convert a static picture into a really cool animated poster. You can enroll in this course alone or invest in my motion bundle deal, where you will get a lifetime access to all my premium courses. You will get an access to our community where I'm doing challenges for money prizes. You will also get more than 80 animated project files that you can use in your next project and save a lot of time. Each folder includes a preview video for the scene, a JPEG file to see what the project file includes, and an asset folder with all the assets for the scene. And of course, an AE file for you to drag it onto your project. In addition, you will get a free one-on-one private lesson with me where you can ask me questions along your journey to becoming a better motion designer. So, if you are serious about your career, visit Design and Motion School and start learning After Effects the efficient way with me. The link is in the description. Alright, back to the tutorial. So the first thing we will do is of course create a new composition. We can call it Master Comp. Let's make it a full HD resolution. You can use a different frame rate or duration than mine, but for the background make it gray as I do, because soon it will be much easier for you to understand what we're doing. Let me just close this Precom so we're all on the same page. Alright, now we need to create another comp for the ripple animation. So let's create a new composition. We can name it Ripple. And now let's change the height to 1980 as the width to get a nice and big square comp. We can leave the settings as they are and hit OK. Now to make this effect work, first we need to create a new black solid to use it as a background in this scene, because we need to have black and white information for the CC ball action effect to use. Soon I'll explain what that means. We can lock this layer, and now for the white information in this comp, let's create a stroked circles. So let's long press the rectangle tool and select the ellipse tool. Let's turn off the fill and set the stroke color to white with a big stroke width. Set it to 100 for now. Now hold shift and create a nice circle in the scene. Open the size of this layer and set it to 1000 so we are all on the same page. Finally, let's align this layer to the comp, then bring this pre-comp to the master comp and start creating the effect. So first let's find the CC ball action effect and apply it to our comp. Now let's change the coloring to smooth to get better results. Next, set the grid spacing to 2 and the ball size to 50 for now. And now when we change the displace property, we will see that the white and black areas get separated from each other. To see what we're doing better, let's rotate the effect and try to understand what's happening. Alright, so in After Effects there is a very cool functionality where one effect can be manipulated by the white and the black data it gets from a comp or a layer. That is exactly what's happening now. Basically, as I said earlier, we need to create some black and white data for the CC ball action effect to use and create its magic. So as you can see, the CC ball action effect sees the white circles and the black background within this precomp, and when we change the displace property, the effect separates the position of the data it gets from the white and black colors in this precomp. But as you can see, the separation is happening in a very contrasting way. To make it smoother, we need to create some gray areas in the precomp. And we can do it by creating an adjustment layer, which we will call blur, and then add a fast blur effect on it. Let's set the blurriness to 50, and as you can see, we now have some gray areas between the background and the white circle. And when we go back to the master comp, we will see that now the separation is happening in a more softened way. So now we can design our ripple as we want. First, let's set the displace to 20 and the ball size to 30. We can change it later if we want. And now, to get more control in the scene, let's bring back the rotation to 0 and achieve this angle using a camera. So right click and create a new camera. Make sure to create the 2-node camera, because in our case it will be much easier to achieve the desired angle, because a 2-node camera has a point of interest function. Let's make it a 35mm camera and hit OK. Great, now let's select the camera and press P to open the position and start to change the X and the Y axes until we get a nice angle. You can set the values to match mine, so we're all on the same page. Next, let's create a black background in the scene so we won't see the edges of the effect. And now let's improve the look of the ripple even more. For this, let's search for the Fractal Noise effect and apply it to our comp. This effect will help us to create a more randomized ripple look, because we can use the black, white and gray areas it creates. To make the CC ball action effect seize this data, we need to place the Fractal Noise above the CC ball action. And now, to integrate the data from the ripple precomp and the Fractal Noise effect, we need to set the blending mode of the Fractal Noise effect to multiply. Great, so now we have some nice randomized ripple in the scene. We can now lower the complexity of the Fractal Noise to 2 to soften it a little bit. And now, if you want to create a more dominant ripple, you can play around with the contrast and the brightness properties of the Fractal Noise effect, as well as with the displace property of the CC ball action effect. Furthermore, you can open up the transform properties of the Fractal Noise and animate the rotation to get a better motion. We will do it soon, but before that, let's create the ripple animation. For this, go back to the ripple comp and go to second one to start the animation from here. Let's bring the circle here and press S to open the scale property. Set the value to 0 and create the first keyframe at this point in time. Now move to second 3 and scale this layer, making sure it stays within the comp boundaries. We can set it to 150. Now let's go back to the beginning of the animation and create the disappearing animation. For this, select the layer and use the search bar to find the stroke of this shape. Let's create the first keyframe at this point in time with the value of, let's say, 300, and at second 3 set it to 0. Alright, that looks great. Now let's place the time indicator at the second 3 and press Alt and the right bracket to cut the layer from its end. Great, and now let's select the keyframes, right click and convert them to easy ease. Then go to the graph editor and use the speed graph to make this animation start very fast and slow down towards the end. Awesome, now let's go back to the master comp and see what we've got. If you find this tutorial helpful, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and like this tutorial. Alright, that looks nice, and now let's stand at second 1 and improve this ripple animation by creating some keyframes for the fractal noise effect. I will use the contrast, brightness and the rotation properties. Now let's press U to see the keyframes and move to second 3 when the ripple animation ends. And now bring the contrast and the brightness to 0 and set the rotation to make one full rotation. Looks nice. Great, and now let's select the keyframes and convert them to easy ease. Then go to the graph editor and use the speed graph to make this animation start very fast and slow down towards the end. If you want to create a more dramatic ripple effect at the beginning when the ripple is starting, you can adjust the initial keyframes for the contrast and the brightness effects of the fractal noise effect. You can also make adjustments to the displace property of the CC ball action effect. I think we can set the displace to 20. Great, and now let's enter the ripple precomp and create more ripples in the scene. For this, select the shape and press Ctrl D to duplicate it. Now let's create a small offset and move this layer 10 frames forward. Let's make another duplicate and move it 10 frames forward as well. Okay, and now let's randomize the look of these ripples by adjusting some keyframes. First, make sure you are standing on the keyframes. And now let's make the stroke on this layer start with the value of 200. Now let's stand at the final keyframes, and here we can change the scale property to reach up to 130. Let's do it now for the third shape as well. Let's change the stroke to start at the 100 and finally change the second scale keyframe to 100. So now each ripple is smaller than the one before it. I think it looks super cool. And now we can add some more contrast to the ripples by adding the exposure effect. Play around with the settings until you get something that you like. Let's see how that looks. I think the ripples is too complicated. To fix this, you can open the fractal noise effect and under the transform properties, change the scale to, let's say, 300. That looks better. Now let's add a nice glow effect to it. So find the glow effect and add it onto the comp. If you can barely see your glow, it's because your bit depth is set to 8. You can change it by clicking here and setting the bit depth to 32. This will give you more colors to the project and therefore the glow effect will appear better. But note that working with a higher bit depth will slow your rendering time significantly. Alright, so now let's adjust the glow properties until we get something that we like. I think we can scale down the ball size. So let's open the CC ball action effect and set the ball size to 820. Okay, and now let me show you how you can change the color of the ripple we created really quick. For this, you can search for the photo filter effect and apply it to the ripple comp. Now set the density to 100 and then choose a different filter. I will pick the violet one. It looks nice. And now let's finish the tutorial by adding some nice bouncing sphere animation to the scene. So first, let's make sure no layer is selected to avoid creating an unnecessary mask. Now let's select the ellipse tool, set the fill to rounded gradient and turn off the stroke. Now let's create a small sphere here. We can set the size to 150 and align it to the composition. If your sphere is transparent, you can open the gradient color from here and then click here to ensure that the opacity of the colors is 100%. Then choose the color you want. Check out the second color as well. Next, you can control your gradient from here or by clicking on the selection tool, and when the gradient is selected here, you can adjust it using the gradient handles, like this. Alright, so once we are good with the gradient, let's close this layer and change its name to sphere. You can place it here. Now let's select the ripple precomp, copy the glow effect and paste it onto the sphere we just created. Let's adjust the effect a little bit. Great, and now we are ready to animate it. First, let's find a good place for the sphere to drop. For this, find a point in time where you can see the third ripple. That way you can see where the sphere should land. In my case, I need to bring it down a little bit. Alright, now let's go to second one where the first ripple is starting. And from that point in time, let's press P and create the first keyframe for the position. Next, let's move 10 frames forward where the second ripple begins and create another keyframe. Now let's move 10 more frames forward where the final ripple starts and create the final keyframe. After that, let's go to the beginning of the timeline and take the sphere out of the frame from the upper area like this. Great, so now the sphere will drop, and after 5 frames, let's bring it up to make the bouncing animation. Then the sphere will drop again, and after 5 frames, let's make it go up, but not too much. Okay, so now we have some bouncing animation. Now let's make it look much better by converting the keyframes to easy ease. So press F9. Next, go to the graph editor and let's make the sphere drop super fast. We can do it by dragging the handles to the right, like that. Now let's make the sphere go up fast after the first drop. We can zoom in a bit. Now let's make it stay in the air a little bit. So we will drag this handle to the right. Let's make it drop faster. Okay, let's do the same for the last bouncing animation and see how that looks. I think it can go up faster at this point. Alright, that looks nice, and now I want to show you what you should do in case you want to move the sphere to another place after creating keyframes for the position. Because let's say you decided to change the camera angle to a different one. So after doing this, you will need to adjust the position of the sphere, of course. And because now the dropping point is in a different place. So in that case, all you need to do is first place the time indicator on one of the keyframes, then select the property to select all the keyframes at once, and only then move the sphere to a new place. So let's find a nice place for the sphere to drop according to the new camera angle. If you are enjoying this tutorial, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel to help me reach 100,000 subs by the end of this year. Okay, I think it looks super nice. I can now go to second tree and press N to shorten the workflow area to this point. And with this, we have finished the tutorial. Thanks a lot for watching. I will see you in the next one.